next news. Breaking news from the White House.
President Trump just got the latest briefing on a fresh Hantavirus outbreak tied to a cruise ship. The Andes strain is real, but before any panic sets in, the commander-in-chief made one thing clear: under no circumstances will he ever lock this country down again. This is not 2020. The White House is watching closely while health experts break down exactly why this virus is not built for a pandemic. Still, something else is moving fast behind the scenes. 13 experimental shots are already racing through pipelines from the U.S. military to Moderna. What's really driving the sudden surge in vaccine development? The question is the one that nobody wants to answer yet. So the hantavirus situation hits families directly because parents and grandparents already lived through forced closures, lost jobs, and kids isolated from school. Nobody wants to repeat the isolation, the mask fights, or the small business wipeouts. Communities stay stronger when leaders refuse to shut everything down over a virus that needs close, prolonged contact and dies out fast once the symptoms hit. Now, politically, the contrast is sharp. Trump is delivering on his America First promise to protect freedom first. Meanwhile, earlier policies under the previous administration turned every cold into a national emergency. The broader stakes involve whether Americans regain control over daily life or watch unelected agencies and global labs push fear and experimental injections again. The difference now is a president who draws a line, and he means it. While uncertainty swirls around this outbreak, smart Americans are already protecting their savings from the fear that always spikes the markets. See, here's what your financial advisor won't tell you. By the time the news tells you to buy gold, it's already too late. You're waiting. I get it. Everybody's waiting to see if the ceasefire holds, waiting to see if the Strait of Hormuz reopens, waiting to see what happens next. But gold's not waiting for you. It moves on fear, instability, on the unknown, and it moves faster than you can react. So while you're waiting for certainty, the rest of the world's already planning for what comes next. You can take control right now with Noble Gold Investments. Visit nextnewsgold.com. It's linked below. That's how you get started. Gold's always rewarded those who prepare ahead of time. Now, let's get back to the real twist, because it comes when you look past the calming expert words and the strong presidential line. Multiple governments and companies already have hantavirus vaccines and gene therapies in active development. The U.S. Army tested an Andes strain DNA injection, the exact strain now on the cruise ship. 98% of trial participants suffered adverse events. So why the rush? This is not normal preparation. Here is the president says he has been briefed, and under no circumstances will I ever lock down.
Hantavirus, have you been briefed on the virus?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us what you learned in these briefings?
Well, I think you're going to be told everything, and you already have. It's very much, we hope, under control. It was the ship, and I think we're going to make a full report about it tomorrow. We have a lot of people, a lot of great people are studying it. It should be fine. We hope.
Should Americans be concerned that it's going to spread? And how are you
I hope not. I hope not. We'll do the best we can, yeah.
Trump vows no lockdowns under any circumstances, calls the hantavirus situation under control. Hunter Eagleman not buying the panic at all with this meme. Ready for the hantavirus lockdown. Remember the toilet paper runs to Costco? Right. So some are laughing off the scare, but an infectious disease specialist claims hantavirus can't spread widely because victims don't live long enough. My God.
Hantavirus is less likely to become pandemic than other viruses is because it's so deadly. And so that might sound counterintuitive, but because once you develop symptoms, the progression is so fast, about a third or 40% of people may die from hantavirus, you're unable to spread it widely because you just don't live long enough to do so. Hantavirus is a family of viruses, and the specific member of that family that we're talking about is called the Andes virus. So Andes virus is different from other hantaviruses in that this is the one hantavirus that has been shown to transmit from person to person. Typically, hantavirus transmits as a result of exposure to rodent, so rat or mouse, urine or droppings. People get infected when they're cleaning up after rodents. So where we typically see hantavirus is in very dry, arid regions. So in the United States, most of that has been in the Four Corners area, so Colorado, New Mexico, west of the Mississippi in particular. With Andes virus circulates in parts of Argentina and Chile. It requires prolonged and close contact of a much more intimate level of contact. So, for example, a husband and wife who sleep together, who might kiss. Not to say that this is sexually transmitted, but it's that level of much closer contact. There are no antivirals for hantavirus. There are no vaccines for hantavirus. Hantavirus attacks the lining of small blood vessels, making them leak. And when those blood vessels leak, you have extra fluid in air spaces in the lungs. The virus infects the kidneys. In addition, the heart can also be affected, which can lead to heart failure. Unless you have had direct contact, close contact with somebody who was a passenger on that cruise ship, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be affected by this current cluster, this current outbreak. And I think one really important piece of data will come in when the flight attendant who was exposed to one of the passengers who was later diagnosed with hantavirus, if that flight attendant tests positive for hantavirus, that would be a sign that more casual transmission occurs. But so far, we don't have that data, and we don't have any evidence that that is the case. This hantavirus cluster on the cruise ship is a scientific story, a public health systems story, and a human interest story. It is.
Okay, there you go. That's the breakdown. Infectious disease specialists not expected to reach pandemic levels because you'll be dead. Insists the outbreak stays contained with no risk. Meanwhile, the military and pharma are already pushing 13 hantavirus vaccines, including one tied to the Andes strain with a 90% adverse event rate. This is Nicholas Hulscher.
The U.S. Army and the vaccine cartel have already developed or are developing 13 hantavirus vaccines and gene therapies. 13 of them. And the U.S. Army the U.S. Army and the vaccine cartel have already developed or are developing 13 hantavirus vaccines and gene therapies. 13 of them. And the U.S. Army version's a DNA injection. It's a literal gene therapy, uses a DNA plasmid through a so-called needle-free injector. And they recently completed a clinical trial on it, and 98% of the participants had an adverse event. And the strain of that DNA injection is the Andes strain, the same strain coming from the cruise ship. There's 12 other vaccines. Moderna's developing an mRNA shot for hantavirus with Korea. Canada's developing an mRNA injection for it. China. And again, all of this was pretty recent. So it's almost as if they know that something was planned in the pipeline in the near future.
Right on cue, right? Right on cue. So the establishment doesn't want you connecting these dots. A virus that spreads only through rodent waste or very close contact suddenly has an entire vaccine industrial complex locked and loaded with DNA shots and mRNA candidates. The military already has run human trials on the precise strain involved today. At the same time, the White House says no lockdowns, and experts confirm the virus cannot explode like COVID. The only thing racing ahead is the push for new shots. That's the power play. The deep state and the global labs have already practiced. So the bottom line, this is exactly the moment America First leadership was built for. President Trump is keeping the country open while refusing to repeat past mistakes, and the virus stays contained and the policy stays firm. So share this video with everyone who still remembers 2020 so they know the difference in 2026. And drop a comment answering the simple question, will you trust Trump's no lockdown promise or fall for the next round of fear? Text raw feed to 844-840-4963 to get direct updates straight to your phone. Bypass the algorithm when it matters most. And check out the next news merch shelf below this video for the latest bold gear. We stand vigilant because freedom is worth defending.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.